Hi,
I'm
Artem.
good. How are you guys?
Good, thanks.
Good. We are now live. I'm just going to
You're live?
retweet this.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
I think we'll give it a minute or two before we get into it. Just as people start joining in, I see takes a minute or two.
I'm just going to do a little retweet here to make sure as many people as possible see it.
Mm-hmm.
But is there a link with this tweet to view it?
There is. Hold on, let me share it with you. I'm sending it in a private chat. Oh, there we go. All right, perfect. Cool. Well, welcome everyone. Hi, this is Mashal back again with another stream. If you are joining for the first time, welcome to the Octant community. And if you are, if you're a regular, then welcome again. We've loved all the engagement, we've loved all the support and the love, and we're loving seeing all the allocations come in. Reminder for everyone, please make sure to allocate. Our deadline is 22nd of October, so there's just a couple days left. I know rankings keep going up and down, but every allocation makes a difference, and you get to support Ethereum's growth when you do allocate. So please make sure you do. We also have a couple of other things coming up, some deadlines. So we have the creator program that we have just announced, and the deadline's coming up in 2 days. We are also going to be launching a DeFi summit at the end of the month. So if you're an expert in DeFi and you want to chat, please apply. We have both links in our bio. And with that, let's get on to our incredible guests that we have here today. Some of my favorite projects. I'm a big fan of long form. So, we're going to be talking about all things long form, but also just, I think, other aspects about your journey. So let's start. David, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us more about The Rage and your past work.
Am I muted? Am I coming through?
You were. I just unmuted you.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is David Morris. I'm actually in the middle of all of this. Going to turn off this light behind me. Maybe that'll be a little bit less blinding. I'm a longtime crypto journalist. I've been writing about crypto since 2013. And I am a former managing editor of Fortune's crypto newsletter back around 2020, 2021. And then I joined CoinDesk during sort of the heyday of that publication. I did a lot of work there that people will be familiar with, but most relevant here, I created a podcast series called Crypto Crooks, which was a fully produced documentary podcast. We covered Luna and Do Kwon, and then we also did a series for the real OGs. We did a series about BitConnect, which was a fraud around 2017, 2018. And I think that the Luna show in particular, I think we basically predicted some elements of that crime that have since become part of the public record. So in addition, but really what's important about that show was that it was, written by me from start to finish. There was, it wasn't like a chat show. You get a podcast nowadays, and most of the time it's just two people having a conversation like this, which is great. But we did a fully produced documentary, including film quality score by my friend Altus Nomina, very carefully edited. The episodes were short, which I think is something that we'll probably talk about today. And we really packed in as much information as we could and made it really dramatic and engaging and entertaining. I think is what I've heard people say. So that's really the most important part of my background. And the project that I'm here with is called, for now, we might shift the title, but for now called Tornado: The War on Code, and that's based on reporting that I did for The Rage back in July on the criminal trial of Roman Storm. I think a lot of people will be familiar with the case here. I won't go into too much detail, but it's a very critical case for, I think, basically the future of Ethereum and really the future of on-chain activity, and the sort of the reason we're all here hinges pretty substantially on the outcome of this case, which we got a mixed verdict in. It is still ongoing, and frankly, I think that our project is in a position to maybe even influence the outcome of that case in some ways by getting the word out about what matters there. And so that's our real goal here, is partly just to tell that story, but he's in appeals right now on a conviction, and I think it's important that we get out there and change the narrative in society about what's going on there, and that's a major part of our goal.
Amazing. Well, thank you, David. And just to be clear, what is your project name in this epoch, just for anyone who may not be familiar?
The full name, it's a little bit wordy, but it's Tornado, The War on Code, a documentary by The Rage. I'm producing and distributing it in partnership with The Rage, which is a news site, really up and coming crypto news site that's true to the original spirit of, again, why we're all here. We're cypherpunks first and foremost, and Lolo Leitz is my partner in that project, and that is where we'll be distributing and promoting the show.
Amazing. And next over, Drew, if you want to introduce yourself in Crypto Altruist, and I'm actually just going to rejoin because my team's sharing that they can't see my camera for whatever reason. So if you see a black square,
I can see it.
All right, cool.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. And thanks to the Octant team for organizing this and for having me and for putting on an awesome epoch so far. Everyone I've spoken with has just been so amazed at the support and engagement of the Octant team and all this. And so my name's Drew Simon. I'm the founder of Crypto Altruists. So what Crypto Altruists is it kind of comes from my passion and my previous work experience in the nonprofit sector. I have over a decade of experience working with various nonprofits and charitable impact organizations around the world. And when I started getting into crypto, I started seeing some of these impact use cases around crypto philanthropy, around impact tokenization and measurement, decentralized governance for grassroots movements, these sorts of things. And as I started exploring these use cases, I found that there wasn't a lot of people talking about them in the kind of impact space, and those that were, it was a lot of the kind of negative of but isn't crypto just a bunch of scammers and shadowy super coders and those sorts of things, right? And so I thought, okay, so I have this passion for technology, for impact technology. I have this passion for nonprofit sector. I have this passion for crypto and Ethereum. How do I all bridge that all together? And that's where Crypto Altruist came from. And so we're a content and education platform that's really focused on elevating those impact use cases and helping bring nonprofits, activists, grassroots movements, impact builders into this ecosystem. So we have a podcast with about 250 episodes and a number of series. One that we did with Octant, actually, which was amazing, called Trailblazers of Octant. We had the chance to speak with guests like Protocol Guild and Green Pill Dev Guild, a lot of these folks that have been successful in past epochs. So we've done a number of series like that that are really focused on these impact use cases, as well as about 300 pieces of article and infographic content. And then we're also in the process of building a toolkit for nonprofits and impact organizations to really get from a place of what is crypto, what the heck is it, how do I make sense of this, to okay, here are some of the ways that I can use it to really grow my impact as an organization and to have to make a bigger impact, essentially. And so that's really what our mission is. And a big part of our project for this, and we're just Crypto Altruists on Octant, is our Ethereum for Good Impact Hub. And so we've been working on this for a while, and it's just cryptoaltruist.com/Ethereum. You can see what we have so far. And so what it has is a 9-part podcast starter pack of various kind of Ethereum public goods builders, some infographics on different social environmental impact use cases, and various other articles, podcast series, all exploring Ethereum for good. So we're really looking to grow that and to build out course content into that as well, so we can really have people kind of go from building an awareness through the content to really starting to engage with these tools and understand how to use them for the organization. So that's a little bit about what we're doing. In a nutshell, we're really focused on just kind of showing the good of Ethereum and really helping those that are doing good in the world do more good with this, what I think is amazing generational technology to really redefine how we do good.
Amazing. Thank you, Drew, and always a pleasure to have you. And it's been great to have you as part of this epoch too. Artem, if you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and Oak Research and your role in this epoch as well.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Artem. I represent Oak Research. I'm the founder and the CEO of the company. What we do is we produce long-form content on the various protocols, various blockchains, everything that's happening in the crypto at the moment. So we have pieces that highlight the tech of various projects, but also some shortcomings. So we are trying to be as unbiased as possible, which is quite hard in the market where most of the things are financial, and when you're holding a crypto and you have to write some stuff, and when you're looking at the metrics, it's doing quite poorly. So you still have to hope for the best. But yeah, we started Oak Research 1 year ago. Before that, I got into crypto through an internship at a node management company in France. That's how I started. I basically started to learn crypto within this company. I had to learn a lot as I got into crypto in 2020. So most of the people who were already at this company were quite advanced because they got there in the previous cycle. So I had lots of stuff to learn. And while digging through books, YouTube videos, articles, and actually Binance Academy was one of the main sources of what I learned about crypto. I kind of got passionate about long-form content and learning a little bit more. So 1 year after getting into crypto, I started an Instagram account with two of my friends where we would basically try and explain various investments. So in real estate, in stocks, and I was managing the crypto part. And it was a wild ride for 4 years. And then after 4 years, we kind of, I guess the title of this live stream kind of summed it up pretty well. How do you cut through the noise? Because when you're a media, most of the time, when you don't have the right people to go on the ground to talk with people, to have some scoops, etc., your media is essentially just republishing some info that they get elsewhere. And that's something we wanted to avoid, and that's something we wanted to try and not fall into. And basically 1 year ago, actually 1 year and a half ago, we started thinking with one of my friends that I got to meet through crypto about another solution where we would be able to become the source of information rather than being this constant relay and this constant parrot that would just repeat whatever he sees on the internet. And so that's how we started Oak Research. So the idea behind Oak Research in the beginning was to publish as much free content as possible, collaborate with as many protocols as possible, and try to get some funding from these protocols to cover their tech, to cover their market fit, to talk about innovation, whatever they provide to the space, talk about their metrics, etc., etc. But the thing is, it wasn't that easy, because when we first got into that, we were seeing the giants like Messari, Delphi, Blockworks, all those big companies that have raised millions throughout the years. And we were thinking, hey, there is a spot for us for a smaller research company, but it wasn't that easy. So a few months after launching, we barely had enough to pay for our devs at first, just to launch the platform, pay them for their work, because everything on the platform is built from ground up. So it's we didn't make any compromises. We didn't use like any software that was already ready. Basically, the whole platform was imagined by us and was built by us. So and actually, Octant contributed to this because we partnered with Octant on the marketing grant that we received. And basically, this was the last part that was missing for to pay our devs. And yeah, since then, we kind of we established our English-speaking audience as well, because most of our team is French, but we also have people outside of France that work in various countries. So we have people from Hong Kong, people from Nigeria, people from the US. So we started to have a team that actually is able to cover more protocols, and we started reaching out to protocols we were actually bullish on. And that's everything basically changed this summer. We became profitable, and now we are on path to sustainability without taking into account the market conditions. And the goal of this grant, of this Epoch 9 application for us, is to, on the one hand, to achieve profitability and sustainability in the long term, by being able to provide resources for the Ethereum community through long-form reports, through technical analysis, through data coverage. And then on the other hand, close a chapter of the crypto story that kind of tainted the Ethereum reputation. It was the 2077 collection that went down a year and a half ago, and basically lots of contributors were left unpaid. And they had really good research that was published on the platform, but the platform was shut down. We actually managed to recover everything from this platform. We managed to get all the info about the people that were unpaid, the amount that they were unpaid. And basically the first step, once the allocation is received, and as we specified it in our application, is for the funds to go to the people that were affected. And then the rest of the funds would be used and would be deployed across DeFi to generate yield at first, and then used for Ethereum research, funding contributors, researchers, and publishing content on the platform.
Incredible. And Artem, it's been really cool to see Oak's research and all of the growth that y'all have had over the last 2 years. So let's get into it, right? We are at a time where, and we've had a lot of conversations over the last couple of days. Obviously, we've covered short form, how to create content for brain rot, reducing attention spans. There are conversations on different aspects of this around, are our brains just incapable of consuming long form? And is it getting tougher to create long form? So all of you have covered long form, and I would consider you all experts in different parts of long form, right? And have been doing it for obviously for quite some time. So what's your take on this? Is this something you're struggling with? Is this something you have to keep in mind, or do you have a different perspective on this?
I can start if you guys are okay with that. I think it's kind of the consumption of the entire content has drastically changed in the past, I would say 5 years since COVID. I think TikTok plays a huge part in this. And when I see my girlfriend scrolling for hours on her phone, I'm not the guy who scrolls a lot on TikTok or on Instagram or YouTube Shorts, whatever, but I see lots of people doing that. And I think in order for your long-form content to work, you also have to adapt to short-form content. I think it's both things. It's about how you market your long-form research. And then the other part, I think, which is important to consider now and which has been going around for the last 2 or 3 years, it's the being integrated into the AI tools as well. Basically being a reference within these tools. So for people that don't actually Google things or don't dive into deeper topics, to become a reference on ChatGPT, Perplexity, or any other tools that you have around. So I think the long-form content is still important for both, because without long-form content, you wouldn't have lots of short-form content, because even if you're providing some short-form content about crypto, let's say, you have to at first go through some long-form stuff in order to make it simpler for people to understand. And then on the other hand, if you want, for example, for ChatGPT to give you a sum up of a topic or about something you're looking for, you have to give to ChatGPT something that he can base his research on or his response on. And I think that long-form content is more important than ever today, even though it might not be as much consulted as before by retail people or by general crypto users, let's say. I think it still plays a huge part in the general knowledge and in the general perception of crypto.
David, what's your take on this? And then Drew, I want to hear from you as well.
I'll just ride on what Artem said and sort of double down, because I mean, long form content will never not be very important, because there is short form where you can get some ideas across, and there is short form where you can market yourself. And I think that the point about AI is quite specific to research and getting some of those like facts and insights out there. But we're all talking about very complicated topics that require really deep dives to get into. And so I think that, I think Artem said something about like you have to have the long form content first so that it can be comprehensible or something like that. And I think that is like spot on. You have to create the knowledge first. I mean, we are knowledge creators. We're not just storytellers. We're bringing together things that form a whole in order to actually like convey something about the world to people, and that will never be reducible to 30 seconds. And I don't want to get up on a soapbox and talk about like you shouldn't be watching like YouTube shorts or whatever. I mean, I do. I get some great recipes from YouTube shorts. It's amazing what you can convey in 20 seconds or something. But you know, I kind of and I've written about this on my personal blog a little bit. I kind of worked my way out of brain rot, which really hit me in COVID, like many other things. And now I'm back to like reading and whatever. And so I think that I'm very optimistic about long form content as almost like a reaction and a regrowth, because people are really starting to feel the brain rot. I mean, the fact, and I appreciate the honesty, Mashal, of like, we had the brain rot vertical, and there is a certain like importance to that. But I think that like viewers are hungry for something else, or at least some viewers. I think that like the people I have a hard time not being a little bit dismissive of things sometimes, but like there are some people you will never reach, and sometimes you have to just deal with that. But there are a lot of people, and I can also speak to this on the writing side. I have a lot of paying subscribers to my personal Substack. And there are people who are willing to like actually put money on the table to consume this stuff that goes deep. But to speak to my project specifically, and this doesn't necessarily, we are representing different kinds of long form content, but what I do is narrative, at least for this project and in general. And narrative is a bit of a cheat when it comes to a lot of these things. Artem is having to like, we're going to explain how this blockchain works. It's really difficult to make that like sexy and engaging. And I've done some of that stuff myself, and it's doable, but it's an uphill climb. My entire goal, and I often, sort of sardonically, but sort of really describe myself as a yellow journalist. If it bleeds, it leads. This is going back to like the 1920s, to Hearst, to like, we're trying to sell papers here, people. We're trying to get eyeballs on. And when I'm talking about in Crypto Crooks, it was about crime. And we really we looked at what are the popular long form content formats now or in the recent past. And like, true crime is number one with a bullet, baby. And so that was our like real reference point for that. Is we are going to make this, sorry, there's a jet outside. We're going to make this like engaging in the most direct way. We're going to have like dramatic moments. We're going to have sad moments. We're going to have a lot of funny moments. And I think that like that, telling a story and like telling the human part of the story is a huge part of long form content going forward, and always has been. I mean, people still watch movies. People still watch hour-and-a-half long movies. People still read novels, even if, they're not the novels that I would read sometimes. And so I think that like that, to the extent that you can do it, putting people first in long form is really key, because people want to know, I mean, and, not to get too like philosophical about it or whatever, but, there's a lot of people out in the world right now who, because of this short form content, frankly, feel increasingly isolated, feel like they don't know where they're going or what they're doing, feel like they don't know what's going on around them. And so taking these stories of real people, that is actually like a huge, huge hook for a lot of listeners out there who might be hooked on short form stuff, is like, this is actually how lives happen, and there's I think a lot of people out there who are feeling increasingly alienated from just like their own lives. And so when you show them the story of like, this is how life happens, this is reality, I think there is a huge hunger for that. And like I unfortunately did not have the privilege of getting hard metrics for Crypto Crooks from CoinDesk at the time, but my understanding was that it was very popular. And we got to do 2 seasons. We had big sponsors. And so I, to the extent that I have access to that data, I think the approach was successful.
I love that. And I also shout out to Serial, the podcast that got me into podcasts.
Yeah, a good example. I mean, those are 4 or 6 episode seasons. You really go deep. You also get the multimedia, and we'll talk about the sort of other elements of this, but.
Absolutely. And I have so many thoughts, but Drew, I want to hear your take first before I jump in as well.
Yeah, for sure. This has been great. Love what Artem and David had shared so far. And this kind of conversation around like telling the human element, I think is so important. And I think that like, just thinking of the times I've, on my podcast, I've had people get so emotional talking about the impact they've created with Ethereum, that they've, been crying or sharing some like really personal story about, the impact of this technology on people's lives. And it's like, it can be hard to do that if it's not in kind of that long form conversation where you're really getting to know that individual and tell their story. And I think that like when you tell that human narrative in that story, that's how you move something from like an idea, or in this case, a technology, to a movement, right? Is to like, get people on board by getting them excited about, how this will benefit their lives, how this will, impact them personally. And I think, when I'm trying to onboard new users who are non-crypto, and I operate a kind of in a lot of spaces that aren't typical crypto spaces, and with people that aren't involved or have a lot of pre-existing knowledge of crypto, it's really about focusing not on the tech first, but really on, on the value add for the community, on the benefits, right? And then going into the technology, behind it. It's kind of like right now, I don't know the code that is underneath this platform that we're using to stream this, right? I just know that it works great. It's convenient. That's awesome. I'm curious to learn about the code, but, taking a similar kind of approach to Ethereum is saying, okay, here's the benefits. Oh, and also now here's the technology side of things, as opposed to just kind of jumping in with the white paper, right? And so I think that that's an important piece of it. And I also think that like, when it comes to this long form versus short form kind of content side of things, it's been crazy just since I started in June 2021. It was when I started Crypto Altruists. Just how much it's evolved since then, and the emergence of these, of TikTok and these short form videos. And the way that I've kind of approached it is, trying to like meet everyone where they're at and have a little bit of that for folks that prefer for that to be their content way of consuming it. A lot of our listeners like to listen to our interviews, which are about 40 minutes long, when they're commuting to work, or, cooking dinner or something like that, or taking the dog for a walk or whatever it is, right? So we want to be able to have that for them, to be able to do that in a way that's convenient. It's not too technical, so they don't have to focus too hard to understand all the little intricacies, and they can do something else in the background. And then taking those bigger conversations and breaking them down into shorter bits, shorter clips for folks on socials, infographics, which, people see, catches their attention, and then bringing them to the longer form content. So yeah, it's been a very interesting transition, and just the space has evolved so quickly. It's hard to keep up. And, our bread and butter has been our podcast, those longer kind of human conversations. And I think that those, I think that long form will always be vital in this idea of turning something into a broader movement and bringing these people into the space, is to really be able to bring that emotion into the story, which is, I think, is really, you can do in these long form kind of mediums of content.
Absolutely. And I, as much as, and I love TikTok, I love short form so much. I probably have a lot of brain rot too. But I also love long form, and I love and I think long form was always my first love in a way, because I love reading. There's so many Substacks that I subscribe to, and it's because I appreciate short form for what it is, but I also make time for long. Like it's really about, I think part of it is also what you're in the mood for, what you really are craving, right? Intellectually, or even narrative, which David, you mentioned is so important, because when you like, there are certain writers that I subscribe, and I think paying for subscriptions is so important, because I think if you want to see more content of a certain kind, you have to support writers, newsletters, projects that you believe in, you want to see more of. You don't just get everything handed. And I think that is important. So I have a lot of appreciation for that. And of course, I'm grateful for being able to, but there are certain writers where I just love their narrative and perspective, and I want to see more of it. So, whatever more that at least personally I can do to see more of that. And I think we've seen that shift to even Substack because of that, where a lot of writers have built that audience and connection that takes time, but really, really helps. But one thing that each of you also touched on, Artem, David, and Drew, in different ways, was you also need to do short form, and that sort of goes hand in hand. So have you, and I guess David, you also have that perspective from like, traditional media of like whatever gets the views and the clicks, right? Like you have to, clickbait is a necessary evil, and of course, crypto Twitter incentivizes that a lot more. But
I think that like I've always hated the word clickbait. I mean, it's like denigrating, really. And when you think back to just the way the media has always worked, I mean, headlines have always been a thing, from probably going back to like Roman news bulletins written by hand on scrolls. You probably write the most interesting thing big at the top. It's only fair to call it clickbait when you're not actually delivering on the promise that you make up top. And I think that is really like the key thing, both for like creating a productive funnel between something really like attention grabbing and something that like gets you more engaged with the deeper issues. And also just like in more general terms, like creating an ecosystem of media that works for people. But I also think that there's a dynamic here between creating long form content that is engaging, and then the most engaging moments from a piece of long form content are both like keeping you in the story as you're listening or reading or watching it, and then they make great things to pull out to turn into short form. And I'll say a third thing about all of this, where it all works together, because if you're doing long form content right, you are following your own muse, so to speak, and you're doing things that are unexpected, things that are creative, and those moments often make good pullouts for social media. One of the things that I will say, working on Crypto Crooks back at CoinDesk, is that I think we did not have as much, and this is 2023, so I think maybe the shift was not quite as clear at the time, but we did not have as much of a team working on the back end, pulling out short form stuff and distributing it to TikTok and stuff. But we're going to do kind of a reel of that show to put out to show people a little bit more about what we were doing. And like one of my favorite moments from Crypto Crooks, which I won't detail too much because I want people to go back and try and find it. But we have great quotes from people who, like, if you have somebody who says something and then like 3 months later it doesn't sound so great. One of my principles of like really impactful long form content is know who the bad guys are and don't be merciful to them. And one of the things that we did that was like my favorite moment maybe of the entire series is we have a quote from an investor who said something really stupid and maybe a little bit suspicious. And it's like so on the nose that I kind of like break out of the narrator role in this moment. And I like have this conversation with my producer where I'm like, is this real? And we record that conversation and we actually put it in the show. And then, and I'm from Texas and I'm a big hip hop guy. And so we actually take this quote, and my music producer, Altus, puts a like DJ Screw Houston beat underneath it. We slow it down and we just repeat it over and over and over again to make this like chewed and scrapped remix of this really dumb thing that a guy said. And like that, it breaks up the flow of this long narrative, but then it's also a highlight that, we didn't do it at the time, but in theory, it makes a great like social media pull that's like 20 seconds long or something. And so I think that like those are two linked pieces of advice, which is you can't have, and I think it's related too, because people do have shorter attention spans. And so you can't just like have a narrative thing that goes start to finish, no interruptions, no shifts. You have to have swerves in there. You have to do something unexpected, keep people's attention along the way. And then those can be, I think, these short form pulls. I think those can be very productive. I think that there are some people who can build for short form, and there are some things that you can put specifically out there in short form, or even like make an advertisement for your long form thing that's crafted that way. But I also think there are a lot of opportunities to, like, if you're doing something long form that's engaging and that's hitting, that can be good short form content.
Absolutely. And I shout out to Texas as well. That's hilarious that you got the beat going there. What about you guys? Like, what's your take been? Drew, let's go over to you and then we'll go over to Artem.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that you kind of almost can't have one without the other nowadays. And, I think when it comes to like using short form to bolster long form content, I think like, it was very interesting what you said there, David, around clickbait. And I hadn't really thought about that before. And it's whether or not you kind of deliver on that, right? Because you got to get people in the door. And then once you get them in the door, are you providing value, right? And so, for us, we try to do that through things like our infographics and our, short 1-minute clips that we post across platforms. And yes, they're catchy, and yes, they're sexy and exciting. But really, the goal is to help, provide that kind of snippet to get people interested. So then maybe, next time, if they don't listen to the full episode this time, maybe next time they'll come across it, or, they'll come across it in their search and they'll be more interested. Oh, I saw this, previously. So it's a way to kind of like plant the seeds as well, I think, right? By using this kind of short form content to get people excited, to get them start understanding and hearing, these sorts of things, right? So I think both are important. And, I think about too, like, people are so busy nowadays. It's a stressful world. There's so much going on. I know a lot of people that have just like tuned out of the news, right? For the most part, and, are really struggling with that. And so you have to kind of really, be patient and understanding that people sometimes also are just like burnt out, and maybe they don't have the capacity to read through this very long thing or listen to this, long podcast episode, and that's okay, right? So here's some kind of, short form content to sum it up for you in a way that makes sense, that's accessible, that's easy. So I think that, you kind of got to meet people where they're at, and understand that you can't really have one without the other nowadays. And that's okay. And that there's an important place, for each of those. And, there can be great short form content and there can be bad short form content, as there can be great long form and bad long form as well. Right. And it's how you deliver on that value, like David said, which I think was very well put. So yeah, it's just, I just think about how crazy it's been, and I can't even imagine like a few years from now what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I can go next. I think there are two things that are important with the short form content. I think one of the things that David and Drew kind of touched on, it's about taking a snippet out of your long form content and then enticing people to go and check the full thing. It basically draws some people that wouldn't have seen this content otherwise. It allows them to share it more easy in easier ways. So for example, if you take, let's say, a short on Instagram, so a Reels, you can repost it to your story, but you would not post like a full movie, the link to the full movie on your story, so it would not reach as many people. But if people watch the short form content, then they might be interested into watching the long form content. Then I think it's also about diversification of the medias, because if you write a long form article and you decide to extract something for I don't know, a live stream or once again a short video, then you can adapt this content to the people you wouldn't have reached otherwise. Some people don't need the full picture to go through your long form content, because either it doesn't fit their consumption of content or because it doesn't fit the media that they consume most of the time. I know lots of people that listen to podcasts and not many people that actually read. So I think it's also about the adaptation of your content and your way of fitting this content into the current narrative. And I think also it's when you're creating content, whether it's video content, writing content, whatever, you have to adapt to what's currently working, because otherwise you would be delusional not to adapt to that, and you would be left behind. And get overtaken by those that are able to adapt and that are able to execute better than you. So I think it's one of the things that people don't take into account most of the time, but it's also, you have one part where you get a snippet of what you're doing to some people. The other part is about creating a new form of presentation of your content to the people that you would not necessarily reach, and that would suffice them. You don't need to give them more. And then it's also about being on several social medias as well, because it's not always about only posting on Twitter or posting on Instagram or on YouTube or wherever. You need to be everywhere, because right now the span of attention has reduced so much in the past years that you have to try and grab as much attention as possible, because once again, it's the most important thing that you have, and it's basically the best measure of your impact today. It's the attention that you get, it's the likes, it's the engagement, it's the interactions, it's the number of views, whatever. And basically, if you're looking for sponsors, if you're looking for people to get excited by your project, these are the type of data that you would typically present first. Say, hey, we can actually reach like 100K people in 1 month. And then you can give also a persona of the people that you can actually reach. So people on Instagram would be kind of younger, people on Twitter would be more crypto native, people on YouTube would be people that are most of the time older and that are more interested by a video content that you can visualize in a better way. So I think it's all about adapting your content and trying to reach the most wider audience as possible.
Absolutely. I think reaching a wider audience and then also finding your niche, right? For anyone who's watching that wants to get started with long form, what are some tips that you have that have worked or that have not worked? And again, we have a bunch of creators, obviously, who've been watching these streams and who've found this really effective. So yeah, let's kind of switch tracks here for folks that are starting out. And yeah, what advice would you give them?
If I can jump in first, I think and I'm self-serving here, but I think my advice is to start with writing, because everything is ultimately writing. And whether you wind up doing a podcast, a movie, I mean, if you've ever, I mean, this is such a like basic thing that I think even me, it's taken a long time to figure out. But if you watch a good movie and a bad movie, like the difference is almost always writing. If you have you can have bad acting, bad special effects, bad cinematography, the entire thing can be terrible, except the script. If the script is good, there's going to be something there to watch. Whereas, you know, and we've seen this increasingly commonly, unfortunately, you watch like a multi-$100 million Hollywood movie with a piece of crap script, and it's a waste of money. And so when you're looking at this idea that, yes, people do want multimedia, people do want, you know, this accessible short form stuff, but you can't go there first. And Artem said something earlier that I think I'll just reiterate again and again. To get to the short form, you actually have to go through the long form. And to get to the multimedia, you have to go through the words. You have to know how to structure a story. You have to know where your story actually is. And I mean, I don't want to say this in a way that discourages people, because it is a much tougher environment. But, you know, I got the privilege of spending, you know, 15 years doing just writing all the time. And that I think made me understand where these beats are in the podcast, because when you're reading, you're narrating it to yourself, right? And so you learn how the narrative works from the writing. And you also, and this I think is another really important aspect of this, which is when you're doing short form, or when you're doing condensed multimedia, you need to be able to make strong statements. And I posted a little tweet under our thread about the live stream today that, like, one of my principles, and it's not going to be a fit for everybody, but one of my principles for a good narrative is you have to know who your villain is and you have to go after them. And to be able to do that in a confident way, and not to mention, like, I've never been sued. So I think given my career, that's quite an accomplishment. And so you have to know how to manage facts. And so that, I think, is where I would say, and I guess there's another aspect too, right? Which is writing is cheap. We're doing, all three of us, various kinds of like pricey productions of one form or another. But you can write for free. You can start a Substack tomorrow and it doesn't cost anything. You can start building your audience there. You can start getting your skills in order. And that long form writing will then make your long form multimedia content better the more time you put into honing that craft. Because, like, you know, we're going to do this 4 to 6 part podcast series, right? And it's going to tell one story. And so I'm going to sit down, you know, starting at the end of this month, and I'm going to outline 7 hours worth of audio. And I'm going to take this story that I have already got. Like, I've been there. I saw the trial. I know Roman Storm's story. I got to do a lot of research and find more parts of it. But then I have to put it all together in this huge thing that all makes sense and all builds on each other. And if I hadn't, you know, I've also written a couple of books, and that's where you really get into knowing how to make these things flow. But without that background in writing, I don't think you can, well, some people can do it, but like this kind of highly structured thing where you're trying to convey both a narrative and complicated information, like, you have to be a writer first. And again, self-aggrandizing, self-serving, but that's my take.
I just also want to add on, like, actually write. And my beef here is a little bit with AI slop, because I feel like it's such a disservice to people that are reading content. It's so clear, especially when it's lazily done. And if you have not built out your voice as a writer, using AI is not going to help you build your voice. Like, yes, maybe if you're getting feedback, perhaps, but I think the best way is to literally do the work. And then I know you guys had thoughts, so please.
Yeah, I can go. One of the things that we used to do before, it was to interview some people in the crypto space. And so it would be long form interviews with sharp questions and like trying to ask questions that people don't want to respond to. So really hard questions about like some shortcomings that we have identified and this type of stuff. And the thing is, it didn't work. I think it didn't work because most of the people that we used to interview were the people that either were interviewed by many medias before, and even though I would say that our questions were better, it was kind of useless, because they would reach a wider audience and a person who has already watched an interview with I don't know, Mudit Gupta from Polygon, for example, they would not watch another interview because it would be that interesting to them. So I guess one of the things that you could do differently, and that's something that we have realized with Oak Research, is you could position yourself in a segment where you already have competition. This is the first thing, because if you position yourself where there is already competition, it means that there is demand for this type of content. So once you have competitors and once you have identified your segment where you want to be positioned, one of the most important things to ask yourself is, what is your edge and how do you benefit from this edge, and how do you get to a point where your competitors that were here before you can actually notice you and either be afraid of you, or how could you take their market share from them, bring a part of their audience towards you? I think this is one of the most important questions. And then we go back to marketing about your content. So if you have an edge, even if your writing style is better than your competitors, let's say, it doesn't really matter if you don't know how to market it properly. Because if you don't have the distribution, you're not able to reach more people, and your edge doesn't matter. So I would say you have to consider these two things. One thing is the distribution. How do you distribute your content? How do you get people to interact with your content? How do you provide value to these people? And then on the other hand, it's what is your actual edge in this industry? And what are you doing differently from others? And I think these are the two most important things to ask yourself when you're creating long form or even short form, to be honest. And when we were doing these interviews, we didn't have an edge and we didn't have a good distribution. So we stopped doing this, and we focus more on the writing content and more on data and more on design, which has helped us a lot because most of the designs in the crypto space are quite bad. And I know Octant actually puts lots of effort into the illustration, so it's nice to see.
This is something we really focus on too. It's really important, that visual stuff.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And I think it's also refreshing to people when they go on Curve, for example, and then they actually have like a nice graph of data that they can actually understand. It really helps a lot with your own distribution as well. So I think these are the two main things that I could recommend to people who want to start. And also maybe add one more, just talk to people and ask for things. You would be surprised how many people are nice in the space and how much they are willing to help. And I think asking could never be bad. Like the only thing that I would say is, for example, if you have a really good connection that you can activate, let's say you can reach out to Vitalik. Only use this connection if you know that your content will either bang or be interesting enough for this person. Because if you shoot once with this type of connection, you may never get another shot. So make it meaningful, make it impactful, but still talk to as much people as you can and get as much more insights as you can.
Such an important point, Artem. And I think, just if I may add, please don't ask with entitlement. You know, I have definitely gotten cold DMs from people I've never met, never spoken to, who after following up will actually just be straight up asses like, what the hell, you don't have time, or you bit like it just, and it's like, okay, there are a million and one things that a lot of times when people have a lot going on, you may not have context. So just, I think there is an art to reaching out respectfully in a way that can get you what you want, and you don't want to be entitled when you do that.
And can I add one pro tip to that one as well, which is make it easy. Make it for people like this, make it very easy. Say, like, we've got this all planned. We need you for, if you can tell somebody we need you for 10 minutes and we're going to be done and we're prepared, that is huge.
That is so, so important. Like, don't ask to get on a call to get them to the ask, especially if it's someone you've never met. You're not entitled to anybody's time. So make it easy to respond and for people to be able to help you. Drew, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, well said, David and Artem. It's hard to follow that up. But I think one thing I want to add is that, like, especially maybe from the lens of podcasting, is that, you know, you need to get over that initial humps too, right? And, you know, it's easier than ever to start. You know, like David said, it's cheap to write. There's a million platforms you can do these things for free. You can start podcasting for free. You can start writing, making infographics, whatever your, you know, short form clips type of content is. But I want to use the example of podcast to kind of illustrate this. And that I looked up the stat to make sure I had it right. That approximately 90% of podcasters don't get past 3 episodes. And of the podcasts that do continue past those 3 episodes, about 90% of those don't make it past episode 20. So if you get to episode 21, then you're in the top 1% of podcasts in terms of the amount of content you've put out. And so, I think a lot of that, or not a lot of it, some of that will be like, product market fit, and maybe the podcast didn't find its audience. But, a lot of it just takes time, and it's normal in the first, few episodes, a few dozen episodes to only get a few listens, and it builds up slowly over time. That can happen, right? And that's okay. And don't get discouraged. And I think it's important to like build in those feedback mechanisms with your community as well. So you can get feedback if things aren't working, and you can get that honest feedback, or if they are, what's going well, what's not, early on, being open to kind of iterate, right? And it's such a fast moving space that like, people think, oh, I'm just not, I'm not an expert. I don't have that same knowledge level. I'm like, nobody's really an expert here, right? Like this space is so new. It's so early that you can become an expert, especially as things change.
I'm an expert, but I'll let that
everyone except for David. Yeah. But yeah, like things are changing so fast that you can find your niche and carve it out, as these new kind of technologies and ideas emerge. So that would be kind of my advice.
And Drew, before you go on, I want to ask you about that first part too, because there's getting past that 20 episode mark, but it's not just continuing. I think it's also important to emphasize consistency and scheduling.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know if you've had experience with that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I think that that's actually worked into a lot of like these podcasts, kind of like SEO sort of algorithms, is having that consistency. And for us, that's been an important part of our model. We've had about 250 episodes now. We put one out once a week, have for, about 3 years now. Maybe we took a week off, maybe for like a holiday or something like that. But for the most part, have been consistent. And that's really important, right? Because again, like if you have those folks that, maybe every Wednesday morning when someone's commuting to work, they want to listen to our episodes, which we usually put on a Tuesday, right? Or something like that. But also then it builds up that credibility. It builds up that, that SEO score with Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever it is. So yeah, definitely great point, David. I'm glad you brought that up. Like, getting to that point is important, but then that consistency is important as well. But then also realizing
it becomes like a parasocial relationship.
Yeah.
People learn who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And at the same time, like consistency is great, but also knowing like, oh, when you need to pivot, right? And that's when building those community feedback mechanisms in as well. So yeah, that's great. Mm-hmm.
Incredible. So I know that we're at the last bit of the stream. It's been so great. I feel like we could keep chatting for so long. There have been so many just nuggets here, and just so many insightful thoughts. To wrap it up, one reminder, obviously, to everyone. Well, first off, thanks everyone for watching and for staying on till the end. I see we've had quite a few people join in. Let's take this last bit. Talk about why people should allocate to your project and what difference it can make. The community is watching, they're tuned in. There's a bunch of other people who are going to join in after as well, and we'll keep trickling through. But what difference does an allocation make to you and what's possible? Yeah, I want to give you the stage for that. So David, if you want to start, then we'll go to Drew and then Artem.
Sure. First of all, I do just people accuse me of being allergic to securing the bag, and I'm just going to do that again here, which is, as one of the projects that's kind of in the lead right now, I do want to encourage people to look at the full list. Don't just dump into the biggest projects. We are definitely going to be able to make use of every bit of funding that comes our way, but so is everybody else. But to speak to, I mean, I did this at the beginning, and I do think our project is truly critical in terms of getting the message out about the really intricate legal implications of these prosecutions, not just of Roman Storm. I mean, the project is going to be sort of broad in scope. We're going to go back and revisit RSA and the encryption wars in the early 90s, because we're not just dealing with a problem on Ethereum. We're dealing with a problem with governments who want to monitor your chats online. We've been facing, especially in the European Union, decades of efforts to get encryption made illegal. And I think we're at a moment where that is looking more and more like a real threat. And so I don't want to be histrionic here, but there are a lot of people out there who don't know that this is going on, don't know why it matters, and basically think that encryption is for criminals and that financial privacy is always money laundering. And the point that we're going to be making is that the implications here are much larger than this, and that people need to be thinking about it in a systemic way. I think is really the pitch here. But also to make clear, our effort and the reason we're formatting this as a documentary and doing a score and, you know, sound effects and making it immersive and making it fun. And then ultimately, we're also going to make a YouTube video. And depending on funding levels, we might even turn around and be able to get an 1.5 hour cinema length documentary out of this as well. And the goal is to reach beyond Ethereum and even beyond crypto and get to people who care about privacy, who care about civil liberties, who care about democracy, who care about women being able to access abortion, who care about immigrants being able to secure their wealth against the onslaught that is being faced right now across the world. And so again, not to be self-aggrandizing, but this is extremely important stuff. And our goal is to have a real impact in the way that maybe even some of these cases play out. So that's my pitch.
Thank you, David. And I really appreciated your coverage during the Roman Storm trials too. I would actually look at your daily updates and in that.
Yeah, we had a lot of impact there, and I appreciate that people found it useful.
Drew, over to you. What difference does funding make? And actually, before you go on, one caveat, right? Congrats, obviously, you guys are doing so well, but rankings change. So until the allocation window ends, we've seen numbers go up and down, up until the last minute sometimes. So this is something for anyone who's watching. Please do allocate, but for anyone who's on the receiving end, like again, these numbers can change. So please don't take what it is right now for with my connection. Oh wait, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
You're back.
Oh, perfect. I was like, oh wait, I don't see anybody. Cool. Drew, go for it. Tell us why the community should allocate and what difference it can make.
Yeah, and first I just want to, what you said there around it changing. It's been funny. I've been talking to people in the Epoch, some that have it on their phone and they're like refreshing like every 10 minutes to see, and some that are like, I don't want to look because it just makes me like nervous.
Don't get anxious about this.
Yeah. So I'm like, I'm just kind of like trying not to look too much. But so for us, it's really about growing our kind of toolkit for the Ethereum, for the impact economy around the world. And when I say impact economy, people I think often don't realize how large that is, right? Millions of if we look at just charitable organizations, millions around the world. That doesn't include, informal networks, grassroots, activist groups, B Corp, social enterprises. Like there's so many groups out there that are doing good in different ways, and that this technology can really help them do good better, right? And for us, that's what it is bringing this massive economy of people that are doing good in the world into the Ethereum ecosystem. And a lot of these people aren't in these, crypto spheres that we operate in. So it's really trying to reach out to them and speak their language as well and make this content that's accessible to them. So really what this will, this allocation for us will really help us grow that and put out more courses, put out more content, put out more workshops, one-on-one support for those impact economy, builders that want to, grow their impact with Ethereum. And so that's kind of like what we're really focused on doing, and to really keep telling the stories of good, that is the Ethereum. There's a lot of noise still around, it is just a bunch of scams. It's all money launderers, as David mentioned earlier around, the misconceptions around this kind of the trial around Roman Storm, for example. So there's a lot of misconceptions around crypto. A lot of people still think that Ethereum is terrible for the environment, right? Those sorts of things. So it's still showing the good, telling the positive story so we can counter those narratives, getting people in the door, and then providing them with the tools, to really capitalize on this incredible technology to do good. But like David said, definitely I encourage everyone to check out all the projects. It's been amazing just meeting so many great people and creators, like David and Artem throughout this process. And it's been amazing. So definitely check out everyone. And as a chronic last minute allocator, don't stress out, folks. Things change. Let's just have fun with it. Oh, and one more thing. I'll be putting out an episode later today with 2 more Epoch 9 folks. So you can check that out. It'll be at cryptoaltruist.com/Ethereum when it comes out later today.
Amazing. Thank you, Drew. Artem, over to you.
Yeah. Just once again, thank you for welcoming us and accepting us to this Epoch, because I think it's for most of the projects that are part of the Epoch and some people that we've met, it means a lot for most of the folks that are part of the Epoch. And I think it's one of the things that we have discussed internally as well. It's that crypto has this thing where it was supposed to be for everyone. It was supposed to be the distribution of goods between people. It was supposed to be the solution to a lot of stuff. But then it kind of, the finance got in the way, and like the investment and all this stuff. And if you look at the ethos of crypto, Octant is pretty much the most aligned project at the moment. So looking at the distribution of value through investment and early investment, and it helps lots of people and helps lots of projects. And even besides the Epoch 9, you guys have helped people that actually are working for Ethereum, like Protocol Guild and all the data and the L2Bit stuff. And so it's been a great project to follow since I've discovered it, I think 3 or 4 epochs ago. So it was a blast following along. And basically what it means for us today to get an allocation, it allows us to continue existing and continue to put out more information about Ethereum. I think lots of people within this epoch are mostly focused on getting Ethereum out there, onboarding new people. But I think it's also worth maintaining some people that are still in crypto, but that might pivot to other ecosystems to bring them back to Ethereum, to show that the innovation still originates on Ethereum, that most of the stuff that is happening on chain actually is born on Ethereum, and that the chain is not dead. It's one of the most active chains today. It has its shortcomings, and it's worth talking about those as well. But it's moving into the right direction as well. And so this allows us to produce more long-form reports, to onboard more collaborators, more people that have substantial background in research and tech. And I think because most of the time when you think about a publication or research outlet, most of the contributors are underpaid because it's really hard to get funding in this ecosystem. And right now we are in a market where it's still somewhat favorable. But let's say in 2 years, we are facing the same situation as 2 years ago. We will be like most of the research outlets, most of the publications, medias will have to let lots of people go. And basically what this type of funding gets us, at least, it's the more substantial it is, the more yield and return we can have on it. Because once again, as we specified in the application, our goal is to generate a treasury which allows us to then generate yield and basically do what Octant does today, paying out this yield to contributors, and basically everything that comes on top, it's reinvested into the company, into the vision, into the ecosystem, supporting other projects as well, acquire other projects to give them a better future. I think it's really important as well. And once again, what we are doing here, it's essentially we are doing some business, and companies have to be profitable because no one wants to work for free. And at some point you have to get paid, you have to live as well. And I think it's something that we are looking for, getting sustainable, getting funding, and providing more services for the community as a whole.
Amazing. Thank you, Artem. And I agree. It took me years of being traumatized by working in the media space to come to terms with the fact that financial adversity is not the badge of honor that I think it is. So that's been something I've come to terms with. But absolutely, I think we need impartial, unbiased takes. We need projects that are able to do that. We need contributors who can get paid. And I hope other ecosystems run similar rounds that contribute to more independent media creators and work that is meaningful, impactful, and pushes the message across. Thank you guys so much. For anyone who's watching, please go allocate. The deadline is 22nd of October. We are hosting a demo day with everybody here on the 21st. So you'll get a 5-minute pitch from every single project that's participating, and you get to learn more about them in a demo day format. We're also bringing daily streams and amplifying everyone. So if you're seeing our timeline and you're seeing a lot of projects being retweeted, it's because they're in our epoch and we're trying to help you get to know them better in their work. Obviously, there's so much of work that's gone into selecting the 30, but it would be a disservice if we didn't help amplify everybody's voice and the meaningful work they've been doing. So we're doing our best, but it is up to you. Please do consider following everyone who's here. We're going to do a thank you tweet after this, tagging everybody in their socials so you can go ahead, engage. I said this yesterday too, but it takes very little to support people doing good work. If you are not an Octant user yet, which you absolutely should be, amplify people's content, engage with it, help people get more traction. There are so many ways to contribute as well, and to support. But just to wrap it up, we'll be here tomorrow again. Thank you, David. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Artem. A reminder that David's project is called Tornado Cash. Artem is Oak Research, and Drew is from Crypto Altruists. You can find all that and more on our projects page on the app. I'm quite nervous about this Epoch as well, because I feel so invested into everybody doing well. And I really hope everyone and each of you get a lot of funding and are able to really, make a lot of the projects come alive that you have wanted to. And I just think funding is important for that. But aside from that, thank you for watching. Thank you if you've stayed. And if you're watching later, please check out a bunch of all the other streams. We're doing them every day until the end of the Epoch. And yeah, happy Epoch 9 allocation window. Thank you guys. Thank you for watching.
Great conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And thank you everyone watching and listening.